Morning, everybody. Started going through the level 2 handbook, the CrossFit level 2 handbook, and the start of it basically just goes over the 6 main coaching points, the 6 main skills that a coach needs to have. So I'm going to talk about those first 3, which is teaching, seeing, and correcting. So in order to teach, you obviously got to know your stuff. In order to see properly, again, you need to know your stuff and then be able to identify movement faults either in a static environment or a dynamic environment. And then the last one is correcting, that I'm going to talk about today. Correcting is the big one, but it comes from teaching and seeing. So if you don't know those first 2 very well, you're going to be limited in your capacity to do that third one, which is correcting, and actually where you get the athlete to move better. So when we're talking about correcting, there are a few different areas that you want to be thinking about when you are correcting an athlete's movement. So the first one is to obviously try to use a cue that is successful. But there's no real set rule as to which cue is going to be better than the other for a specific athlete. The best cue is going to be which one actually works, right? So whichever cue results in better movement of your athlete. Short actionable cues are usually the best because it gives the athlete a body part and maybe a direction to go. So if you want, say, knees out or push those knees out in a squat, if their knees are caving in, that is very short, actionable, and it tells their knees or a body part where to go, gives it a direction. So those are usually successful. But again, just saying that might not be enough. So there are different types of cues, right? There's the verbal cues, which is just speaking it. There's tactile cues. So instead of saying knees out, you might also say knees out, but give them a hand to push their knee out to. That's a tactile cue, gives them a target. And then the last one is visual. So you can show them and give them like what they're currently doing and then show them what you want them to do. So if their knees are caving in, let's say, you're like, hey, this is where your knees are, this is where I need them to be. And you can show them. Those are the 3 different types of cues that you can give. Second thing is to know multiple corrections for the same fault, right? So let's say that was kind of an example that I just used before with a squat. You have different styles of cues, but even for the same type of thing that you want to happen, let's say in a deadlift that they're shifted really far forward, their knees are pushed over the bar and their hips are down and they're almost in like a squat type position. So what you can do there is you could say a couple things. You could say hips up. Sometimes that brings their hips up a little bit. You could also say knees back. So if they push their knees back, their hips are going to also rise up at the same time. So just having a couple different cues for the same end result is really good. And the bigger you can grow that arsenal of tools in your toolkit, then the better off you're going to be. Third thing to keep in mind is to try to triage faults. So what they're talking about here is, let's say there are multiple faults going on. So in an air squat, for example, let's say their back is rounding out, their knees are caving in, their heels are coming up. It's what we call like a train wreck squat, right? Like it just, you don't know where to start. Usually where you start in a movement, especially if there's loss of midline, that in a weighted movement especially, that would be where you'd want to start. Anywhere where their safety might be compromised, but you don't want to tell them that. So what we kind of like to say is we might, because it's not necessarily going to be dangerous if they lift that load in a slightly rounded position. It could potentially be if they don't have the capacity to do it. But what we like to say is this will be more efficient. It'll be more efficient if your back gets flat. It'll be more efficient if you push your knees out. It'll be more efficient if you drive through your legs or drive through your heels first. So think about that saying, we like to say anyway, use this is going to be more efficient for you. And then it's going to make the movement easier for them. So sometimes in triaging, you can fix one thing and then it fixes a couple other things, which is great. So triaging, it's going to depend, but basically pick one, especially the one if you think it's going to be the most dangerous to them, then pick that one and go after it. But once you pick one, stick with it and try to get them to move better on that. And then what else have I got here? Wrote out notes for this one. You need to assess the cue's effectiveness and provide feedback right away. So you don't want to be in a group class setting, especially, let's say you walking around the circle, say they're in a circle for a drill, and you tell someone knees out, but then you just walk away and don't correct them, or don't tell them whether they actually corrected that or not, then that athlete doesn't know, right? So if you walk around, say knees out, they do it, say better or good. Like if it is good, say good. If it's not quite there yet, say better, or tell them to do more of that thing. So say their knees moved out a little bit but not quite enough, you can just say great, now more of that. So acknowledging when they did something that you wanted them to do or when they actually did move better is really, really good. So you need to kind of balance that critique with praise. You don't want to just be like drilling someone on how to correct and just giving them corrections all the time. You need to acknowledge their effort, and you need to acknowledge when they actually do it better. So we want a really, really good praise to critique ratio. You want to praise more often than you critique, and just reward their good effort. So yeah, those are the main things about cueing. That is definitely one of the biggest parts of coaching. But in order to be good at cueing and correcting, you need to first of all have the knowledge, so being able to teach it, and also being able to see it in order to correct that thing. So hope that helps you coaches anyway, and if you're an athlete, keep an eye out on that from your coaches. So have a good Sunday, everybody.